Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, How Technology Drives the Art of Audio, presented by Robert Margouleff. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. So just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit questions and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control, and we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions workshop series on pro.harman.com. We have a number of sessions for December, and we're starting to add sessions in 2021 as well. And now I would like to introduce you to Robert Margouleff, the presenter for today's webinar. Robert is a Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer, electronic music pioneer, immersive audio champion, and film producer, noted for his work on 4 of Stevie Wonder's classic albums and his work with Devo, Jeff Beck, Depeche Mode, Oingo Boingo, the Doobie Brothers, Quincy Jones, and many others. And now I'm going to pass it over to you, Robert.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. It is morning here. And it's 9 o'clock in Los Angeles. And I've been happy to join in on this webinar and to share my knowledge and my experience with all of you. And my subject is technology drives the art. And I wanted to first just give you a little background on where I came from and how technology has driven my art since beginning with the first synthesizer I bought in 1967 from Bob Moog. For me, music is invisible. It remains only as a memory. It's you turn it off, it disappears. It doesn't stick around. The big question for me, and should be for all of us, is how do ever-evolving technological developments affect our creativity? Today, I'm going to talk about some of the music technologies that influenced my creative story and possibly yours as well. First, a little background. I was active in the underground filmmaking scene in New York in 1967. I had met many of the refugees from Andy Warhol's factory. And those relationships, I ended up making a film called Ciao Manhattan, featuring Andy Warhol's first superstar, Edie Sedgwick. And that's when I heard the first Moog synthesizer. I realized immediately it would be an inspiring way to create a soundtrack for my movie. The Moog synthesizer demonstrated that electronic music was no longer, my screen just went blank here, hold on. Was no longer a sci-fi experiment, bleeping and blooping at the radiographic workshop at the BBC, or in university music laboratories. The concept of a unified method of voltage control changed everything. I saw its potential and I was able to apply it. Ciao Manhattan was completed and incorporated a unique synthesizer score. It's worth seeing and hearing. As a matter of fact, I'm now doing another film on Edie Sedgwick, strangely enough, 60 some odd years later. So what comes around goes around, I guess. I came to love the synthesizer and what it can do. And I abandoned filmmaking and ran headfirst into the open arms of electronica once I discovered the synthesizer. There were no schools teaching it. We had to figure out what it was about for ourselves. It was new territory and I learned as I went. It actually changed the course of my life, and I'm guessing it may have helped set the course of your lives as well. If the synthesizer had not happened for me when it did, I would think I would not be standing before you or speaking with you today. And I think also that many of you would not be here either. As a matter of fact, when I was getting started, Wendy Carlos was around the corner at Bell Sound and was working on Switched On Bach. So there were just a few of us out there. It was out of this experience with the synthesizer that Tonto's Expanding Headband was born. I showed the synthesizer to a brilliant engineer and musician named Malcolm Cecil, and that began the most significant partnership in my life. Together, Malcolm and I explored what could be done with a synthesizer. We built and kept on building and building our synthesizer array, which we called Tonto. the original neo-timbral orchestra. Tonto was the first of what we now call a Eurorack modular system. The concept of the Eurorack and other toys, such as voltage control of all the parameters, including a joystick bender, which Malcolm developed from a model airplane controller. These were some of the things that Malcolm Cecil and I did with Tonto. Its design was revolutionary. It allowed us to talk electrically to modules from many different designers, Moog, Arp, Serge, and Malcolm and me. The keyboard had encouraged many musicians to think of the synthesizer like an organ or a piano. Now, obviously, we've moved away beyond into the new experimental world, and now the Eurorack is back, leaving the keyboard as just one controller of many. Now we will also see several players all playing a single instrument at the same time using interactive programs, just like Malcolm and I did back then, analogically. That's one reason the synthesizer was so big, is that all the components were large. Now the Eurorack is a tiny thing. It sits on your desk next to your computer. Under the name Tonto's Expanding Headband, Malcolm and I created and performed a totally electronic album called Zero Time. And when Stevie Wonder heard about Tonto through our glowing review in Rolling Stone magazine about our album, he came to the studio one evening with our album under his arm to meet us, and he never left. Stevie wanted what we had. We would work with him for the next 5 years, co-producing, engineering, mixing, and programming all the electronica on Intervisions, for which we won a Grammy, Music of My Mind, Talking Book, and Fulfilling as his first finale. So what's the takeaway? Technology. The synthesizer in Tonto, the original Eurorack, affected creativity in a big way. They became integral to Stevie's creation of the albums that defined him and made his career. And when it was Stevie, we first explored surround, a technology that in many ways has defined my career to this day. My first experience in understanding the power of surround was a multi-channel recording of Superstition that Malcolm and I made with Stevie at the record plant in Studio B. As a matter of fact, those records we did with Stevie were monitored in surround and quad during the recording process, which enabled Stevie to occupy the same space as the music, just not having it in front of him. The recording process is one of the reasons that these recordings sound so present, even in stereo. Its power stays with me to this day. Quad recordings never saw the light of day. The technology, we just couldn't get the audio into vinyl, quad into vinyl successfully. But we can thank cinema for really running with surround. Always trying to make the cinematic experience bigger and more emotional, filmmakers committed to creating and mixing in surround and built theaters to bring it to the public. Can you name one film mixed in the last few years that is not mixed in surround? Surround sound has been an integral part of the filmmaking experience for many years. And with the rise of the home theater and DVD with its 6 or 8 or 12 discrete channels of audio, surround finally came to the living room. I was a part of that revolution with the suggestion of a home theater executive at New Line Cinema. I began delivering films mixed specifically for home theater through my budding business, Mi Casa Multimedia. We did a whole bunch of stuff there. It was 10 years of work, and we did The Lord of the Rings and Boyz II Men. And then we started working with DTS, who thought we could do a music-only format on disc, on CD, and DVD audio and SACD, Super Audio Compact Disc, which really didn't catch on. Music fans tended to be younger, and they don't want to stay at home and listen to music in the home theater with their parents. They wanted portability, the Walkman, MP3 players, the iPod, and now, of course, the ubiquitous cell phone. But I knew immersive music would find its way to the audience somehow, and I would soon discover what that somehow would be. In fact, today it is possible for music to be heard in a fully immersive way in any format, including vinyl or any portable device on headphones and earbuds that everyone uses. So what's immersive audio all about? We live in an immersive surround world. We always know where a sound is coming from, even if we don't think about it. We localize it and our brain sets it up for us. We take it for granted. How does our brain know where a sound is coming from? I was very conscious about how we listen and what we hear. It's called HRTF, or head-related transfer function. With immersive audio, we can now take into account the location, vector, or where a sound is coming from. It is as powerful as pitch and duration. We simply could not store vector information electrically before. Now with new immersive technology, we can. But creatively, it has to live in a world available to it. Today, creativity is always in the process of catching up with the technology. For many, composing and playing music in the same sense is about relinquishing control, embracing emotional and chaos. Its rebellion depends on the combination of spontaneity, raw sexuality, and technology. That's what pop music really is. Think of where music had its start, from the primal tribes in reverberant caves. The reverberant space made the song simple and slow-moving, more mysterious and spiritual. Or in primitive drum circles, fast and intricate, there was no reverberance at all. What we composed for a cathedral or concert hall is not going to sound that good in a jazz club, and vice versa. We have instinctively created our music to fit pre-existing formats. The context for which music is going to be used determines how it's going to be composed and performed. The venue, the architecture, the context, live or recorded, will be used to determine what is going to be composed, performed, and recorded. Is the music going to be presented for a live performance, concert hall, a motion picture, cathedral, dance club, smoky jazz dive, streaming where there is no physical context at all, total electronica on headphones? Once we define the context that is successful, we continue to create musical content for it. The architecture of a venue, or lack thereof, is a big part of the experience. Is the performance simply a report of a real-time event, a sonic photograph, or an objective view, a picture of a live event, or does it exist only as the vibrating electrons unfolding in your head, which I call subjective audio? I think we're seeing much more objective audio creations in a studio have nothing to do with a report of reality whatsoever. Everything is vibrating electrons. Everything is composed in a serial manner in the studio. Music has gone to a different place. Not that objective recording has gone away. It's still there with concerts and movies and so forth. But pop records really have become very subjective, where the songs are created in the medium. More and more people stick tiny speakers directly into their ears, me included. Technology, phones, and computers are now the top two devices used to listen to music, according to entertainment data company Nielsen. Major music labels are now generating over $1 million every hour from streaming. On average, America spends just 32 hours a week listening to music. How is this possible? Technology. At home, at work, and traveling in between. People are consuming more and more music than ever before from more devices, and mostly on headphones. Now, for me, headphones really are the latest, really sort of have brought music and entertainment to a new level. Now with headphones so pervasive, we're beginning to compose music with them in mind. Headphone listening is really, composing and listening to music on headphones is very different to speakers, where there is a temporal and spatial difference between you and the music. Listening on headphones creates a feeling of closeness between the musician and the listeners. We are now composing music based on headphone listening. It will change the way we write and perform our musical works. So given that headphones are now so pervasive, what effect do they have on popular music? We have left the real world and its acoustic considerations behind, and much of our new music exists only in the medium itself. The performance unfolds in your head. It is the performance and not a representation of a real-time event. This is why heavily confessional music is now all the rage. It certainly echoes why Bing Crosby exploded in the 40s. He was the first one to use a modern microphone that made his voice sound like he was literally in the same room with his young female fans. He could whisper his vocal to them if he chose. Bing was louder than the entire orchestra backing him up. That explains the riots in Times Square back in the day in at the Paramount Theater shows. With the microphone, he was beginning to be able to rearrange reality. There's this wonderful book which I worship called How Music Works from David Byrne, who said that in his book that headphone listening also lead people to choose music that is more personal. While listeners might be worried about playing emotional or overly erotic music on speakers that others can hear, they might not worry as much when they are listening via headphones. It's hard to measure this, but the music I did with Stevie Wonder, Close and Intimate, just like Bing, by the way, and now Drake, Post Malone, Billie Eilish, feature a lot of confessional inner dialogues. Of course, soul-bearing themes appear in music across the generations, but the rise of headphones, many have encouraged more of this genre in the modern day. And now the next wave is here. Headphones allow everyone to have access to the new immersive audio such as Dolby Headphone, Hear 360, Alexa, and others. They reproduce the existing formats and then bring new music that has no basis in the real world at all. Vibrating electrons, pure electrons, electronica, unfolding slowly in the headspace in front of you, behind you, and above you. Over the past couple of years, I've been working in immersive audio with a team at Hear 360, who have developed high quality, easy to use, end-to-end solution for immersive audio. The big blessing is that 12.1 immersive audio is processed in the encoding end and does not require decoding at the receiving end. The files can be delivered in MP3s, WAV, AAC, etc. And that means that any old headphones will do. There are other systems available that make surrounded headphones a reality, but not with the continuity, simplicity, and clarity of H360, in my humble opinion. I have just gotten, as a quick aside, a pair of K31 731 AKG headphones, and I have to say they're also Bluetooth. Bluetooth has limited bandwidth, but when I listen with these headphones with a wire, I am stunned at the quality for the price. I've been just using them now for about, I would say, 6 weeks, and I am amazed at their accuracy. I'm just very happy to have them, and I've been mixing some really interesting new music utilizing them, and I've been getting very accurate results. It's really a step forward because now headphones are everything. I would say 85 to 90% of everybody is listening on earbuds or headphones. In mixing and rendering for headphone surround, the studio spaces, the architecture will evolve as you will still have to be able to record and mix your material in discrete multi-channel surround for live and theatrical applications. Well-designed studios and control rooms are musical instruments in themselves. It's the only musical instrument that you occupy. Most other musical instruments, you stand next to them or you wear them, like an electric guitar or an accordion, for example. But it's the only instrument you actually occupy. A recording studio is a musical instrument in itself. They will become more essential in this new setting. Artists need a place to perform together and occupy the same space as the music. Considering space and surround placement is a very powerful creative force. Fortunately, with mixing in the box, we now have adapting analog, mixing the box now in place, adapting analog recording technology and studio set up for stereo will not at last be a problem. Headphones are changing the sound of music, and this is really important. Dr. Sean Olive, who is actually a part of Harman, just completed a 7-year research project aimed at understanding the perception and measurement of headphone surround quality. A virtual headphone listening test was developed to provide targeted response curves using a large number of trained and untrained listeners in the USA, Canada, Germany, and China. People in different parts of the world have different cultural biases about what they're listening to, strangely enough. And Sean took that into consideration. From this data, a new headphone target curve was identified that is preferred by the majority of the listeners. Statistical models were developed based on objective headphone measurements. It is essential in the studio to drive headphones with the best possible headphone amplifier as well, because headphone listening is like speakers are in the studio, is only good as its weakest link. The playback chain is only as good as its weakest link, as I like to say. The perception and measurement of headphone sound quality will set the standard for listening equalization as we step into the future. This research will guide future headphone design. When I listen on headphones, I know how a sound moves inside a recording, where a sound is coming from. Location vectors delivered through a personal HRTF are critical hearing response transfer function. Spatial location, to me, is as important as pitch, loudness, and duration. In stereo recording, for example, we record the percussion tracks so that we hear the hills panned across space. It helps create a POV. It is an artifact we create to affect the energy of the performance. It is classical music the way the orchestra is set up within a specific array. Each selection has its place. Each section has its place. It was always a part of acoustic music, especially in sacred music, centuries before the invention of electricity. With the invention of recording, we had to leave spatial information behind, as we could not store it electrically until the development of digital immersive audio. Mixing and immersive audio can place a sound anywhere. My cautionary note is that we have to make sure that there is a reason to move the sound or how to place it. It cannot be capricious or arbitrary. The motion of the sound itself can evoke emotions. At last, with headphones, we now have a final step in the delivery chain, a way to really deliver the most incredible audio experience possible with the convergence of convenience, high resolution, and location. But what about the music itself? Music, after all, is the universal language, but we don't always pay enough attention to what it's saying and how it's being understood. The emotional effects of music have been known by all cultures throughout history, but through sensory evaluation studies, we have made an understanding of more objective, specific, and predictive. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at an interesting evaluation tool called Qbrio, which bases its understanding of music on sensory evaluation studies and predicts where we will experience emotional moments in music. We're in a very interesting place, to say the least. Now our recordings themselves are the performances, no more physical media. Everything lives in the digital universe and streams on demand. In classical music, the concept of ambient surround and a live concert performance is taken for granted. Before the invention of the microphone and recording, if you want to make a performance louder, you added more instruments to the orchestra. So what's the significance of the story? Well, it's about how technology and architecture makes innovation and creativity possible. If art to be art needs an element of originality, new technology and venues inspire new ideas. My introduction to the brand new technology of the synthesizer while I was making a movie was the event that determined what my career would be from that moment on. It included hundreds of records and soundtracks I would be a part of. Faster and faster, exponentially faster, the art and craft of film, TV, and music have continued to evolve. It's been certainly an amazing trip. The invention of MIDI, many different kinds of electronics, images, and so on and so forth, and tools. It's just the world is changing, and so is the ability to monetize music, which is really a serious issue that we need to look into. Now, the laptop has become a new folk instrument. We're able to compose with surround in mind and create very powerful subjective emotional experiences. After all, we listen to our whole live world in immersive surround. I believe that space, objective or subjective, should be an essential part of music composition. Now with headphones, our venues unfold in our heads. And that to me is a huge gift, I must say. The technology has gotten bigger and smaller at the same time. The laptop and portable gear have changed the production landscape forever. It has become cheaper and more accessible to creators and the mass market. There are no more interlocutors. The creators talk directly to their audiences. How do these fast-paced technological developments affect our creativity? For better or for worse, in my opinion, it's for the better. Basically, we're still doing the same thing. That is, first and foremost, storytelling through pictures and audio, and then managing, manipulating, and storing the content. Now there are several systems available that make surround with headphones a reality. With high bit rates and superior resolution, streaming delivery, and total portability, it becomes a whole new ball game. It's only going to get bigger because it has become smaller and portable. We always have thought about recording as a tool of reportage. That is, the recording is a sonic photograph, an objective image of a real-time event. Listen to a recording 3 minutes long, and the listener believes that it was all played together in real time, not really believing it was recorded serially. We invented echo, delay, effects just to create the notion of space and depth. Now the apps themselves have become musical instruments. Once again, creators and composers of all genres will be able to return to composing in a more natural way, to write music that can come from anywhere. It's not just regular stereo either. It's binaural spatial reproduction on headphones. And despite the ubiquity of loudspeakers and sound production, binaural technology is the approach that most nearly approximates the real-life condition for experiencing sound, since it presents the complete audio signal with spatial information, uncontaminated by acoustics of the listening space. Audio has become subjective. It unfolds in your head. It is not really a report of reality anymore. I have become a time traveler in electronica. I know that surround will bring fantastic new freedom to the world of recorded media, especially if the composer-creator is able to control the entire process on his own terms. Mixing and rendering for headphones surround, the studio spaces will evolve, as you will still have to be able to mix your material in discrete multi-channel format. As a matter of fact, I have a pair of JBL 705s on my desk with a subwoofer, which are just fantastic. The well-designed studios and control rooms will become performance spaces and more essential. Artists need a place to perform together and occupy the same space as the music. For commercial and home studio owners who now work exclusively in stereo, considering space and surround placement will be a very powerful creative experience. Fortunately for us, with mixing in the box now in place, adapting stereo recording technology and virtual monitoring is not a problem. What I say is just hang on and enjoy the ride, because we're doing some great stuff right now. I think, again, I have to say that COVID has changed a lot of the way we make music. And I don't think that it's all necessarily negative. I think that we're discovering new ways to talk to each other online and remotely. I think in the end, though, that basically we're social animals. We like to hang out at the water cooler, and we like to talk to people and be interactive with one another on a face-to-face basis. I think once the vaccines take hold and the world comes a little bit more back to normal, we'll have a new paradigm of making music, which will encompass the hybrid qualities of what we're doing remotely now, coupled with live performance. Music, after all, is our tribal ritual, and we really need it. It's a part of how we talk to one another. That's about it. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Robert, we do have a question here. Jonathan is asking, what was the name of the book that you mentioned?
The name of the book is How Music Works. It looks like this. There's some really, really good thinking in this book. I read it and I refer to it as there are a few books in my world that I sort of use as resources. And Helmholtz's book on the sensations of sound and David Byrne's book, How Music Works, are two tomes that I would highly recommend anyone listen to, because it really reflects the latest thinking and where and how and why we listen to things and how it affects us emotionally. I think the studies that Sean Olive has done have also been very, very major in terms of how we can standardize the listening experience on headphones. Everybody's headphones has a different listening curve. How do we mix in the studio to accommodate just one brand of headphones? We need to have the universal listening curve or standard, much like we have RIAA audio in a curve that we use for mixing in the recording studio on speakers. And I think that Sean has done a tremendous job in terms of helping to define that. It took him 7 years, but the results certainly speak for themselves.
How did you first meet Sean Olive?
I met Sean when Dr. Floyd Toole, who was the technical fellow of JBL 20 some odd years ago, and we were working. I had a company called Mikasa Multimedia, where I was mixing, post, and remixing motion picture soundtracks for DVD and Blu-ray. And Dr. Toole was writing a book, and he came and we helped him work out the ideas for the placement of where loudspeakers would be in home theater. And Sean was working for him. And then when Floyd retired, Sean took over and has taken the reins for the last 20 or 25 years and has done some really, really deep, meaningful research on headphone listening and specifically. And that is really, he has written the book on it. And I'm a big follower of his work.
Excellent. We do have a couple of other questions that have come in. Here's a question. Are you mixing primarily on phones or speakers?
I use a combination because the audio has to live in both worlds still. Although in pop music, I think that most people are listening on earbuds or headphones because living on top of one another, and now with everyone living in small spaces, loudspeaker listening is, I don't think your parents are interested in listening to Billie Eilish records, for example. Listening has become a much more personal experience also, in terms of planes, trains, and cars. People are listening more and more in headphones or in enclosed spaces. I think that we're starting to write music now that has been defined by listening on headphones in the studio.
All right, we have another question that's asking, do you feel the future of music is surround and Atmos? What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think surround and Atmos is a brand defined and developed by Dolby, but surround and immersive audio is basically binaural and lives and is most successful right now in headphones. It is a very personal experience where you're listening to music in the first person all the time because the music is unfolding in your head. I personally think until we come up with something better, that this really is the best way to deliver music. Also, audio has been developed immersively for gaming, specifically because people want to know where a sound is coming from. And also for the military, who use the spatial audio in the headphones in a fighter plane to know if there's a rocket or some kind of a thing coming up their tailpipe. Spatial relationships and directionality is a very important part of making music. We had to throw it away because we couldn't store the information electrically. So we invented stereo, and we invented all kinds of reverberation and boxes and treatments to create the illusions of space and depth. Now a lot of these boxes have become sort of musical instruments in themselves. We start now to using the medium itself as a composing tool. So yes, I think that we are seeing a tremendous amount of music delivered on headphones. I think we're creating a tremendous amount of music on headphones, and it's affecting what we write and how we write it, because we now have a much wider palette to be able to use creatively. And I think that's a tremendous gift. The thing I don't like about it is become a little bit more solitary. But I think once we see COVID go away, I think we're going to see some hybrid stuff. And I think we're learning a tremendous amount about how we listen and why we listen, and methods of making music and working together in spite of having to be socially isolated. And I think we're going to learn a tremendous amount from that. and it's going to change the way we write music. It is changing the way we write music.
All right, we have another question. Besides Pro Tools, do any other DAWs allow for mixing and surround sound?
There are numerous. Cubase, Ableton, which is a tremendous creative tool and a musical instrument in its own right, is something I've had a lot of experience with in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's a phenomenal tool. And people are using the computer. The laptop has become a musical instrument because of Pro Tools and Ableton and programs like it, Cubase. There are many filmmaking manipulation programs. Dolby Atmos is one that's very successful, but the Dolby is always in a strange way preoccupied with image because that's their DNA. Dolby started out making music and audio for motion pictures. So they are always conscious of having a visual image attached to the music, where in reality, with good immersive audio, you don't really need to have picture at all. And I'm very much of that school. I think that sometimes picture makes music listening very literal. This is a picture, this is the music for this particular image. Whereas I think that much music can really stand on its own without image and without a physical image. And I think in many ways, it's sort of like listening to the radio. You know, back in the day, there was Tom Mix and Lone Ranger and Gangbusters and Inner Sanctum and all these little 15-minute radio dramas, which we now call podcasts. But radio without image allows you to generate your own image in your own mind. I mean, I can't imagine thinking of listening to the Grateful Dead back in the day with an image. Just 4 guys standing on the stage in the t-shirts. That's not that exciting. But what is exciting is the music itself. And I think that music can stand on its own. It doesn't always need to be supported with an image.
We have a question about Pro Tools asking why it's considered the industry standard.
Because they had first of all, it's a very flexible, and they have really paid attention to continually evolving what Pro Tools can do and adapting to the marketplace. But when they first started coming out, there were I was using originally back in the days at Mikasa, at my post house, I was using the Sadie system, which was different. There are many different systems, but Pro Tools did an excellent marketing job and made their software ubiquitous in the industry, and that's the reason. But it's a remarkable achievement, and we use it every day. It has become generic to music making.
Right, another question. What are your 2 to 3 go-to plugins when mixing in the box?
Well, mostly the Waves bundles. There's a new equalizer called the Fab equalizer, which really sort of allows you to really see a picture of the audio while you're moving the curve through the Fab filter. There are several good programs like that out there. There's a huge choice. We use an Apollo here in our studio, and there's all the UA plugins. Some of them are sort of imitations of the real thing. You say, oh, LA2A, and it puts a little picture of an LA2A up on the screen, and you're convinced that that's what you're listening to, but it's just a picture of of the algorithm that they think is the LA2A. But there are a lot of hardware stuff, like I do have an LA2A, a real one. It doesn't sound the same as the one on in the box. But there's enough toys around there to do it. But when you're recording and making music, for me, the idea is to get the music right the first time and not try to have it modify it too much when you're bringing it into the medium. A lot of the music is created in the medium. The medium itself is the message. You know, everyone's out of the bleachers and on the field. Everybody's making music now. It's the real different approach, and the business model is not perfect. Right now, musicians aren't making a large enough share for the most part. What they're doing and working for, it's harder and harder to make a living now with COVID, not being able to tour. it's pushing us and our creativity to new places. I don't think it's all necessarily negative either. I think that we're learning a tremendous amount about ourselves and about how we make music and how we listen to music. And you know, it's interesting. That's like I said in the beginning, is music only really remains as a memory. We think about it. It's not anything you can put in the showroom window or anything. It is totally in the air, and when you turn it off, it's gone. It's temporal and beautiful and mysterious, and it really is part of the glue that holds our culture together. It's part of storytelling.
We have another plugin question. Have you found any other plugins like FluxSpat worth using for immersive mixing content creation for headphones in custom immersive spaces?
I haven't had any experience with that particular software. The software that I have been somewhat involved with over the last 5 years is a software called Here 360. They have a website, here360.io, which sort of explains a lot about immersive audio and how to develop it and use it. And there is a full software suite available that lives inside of Pro Tools that you can use to mix music into immersive audio. But I haven't used the particular one that this person asked about.
Okay. It looks like that was the last question that came in. But if anybody has a follow-up question for Robert, you can feel free to email me and I can filter that through to him to see if we can get additional responses.
I would be delighted to answer any and all questions for anybody.
Wonderful. And my email is laura.lawrence@harman.com, but you can find it in the registration link that you filled out as well. So Robert, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's such a privilege to have somebody with your background take part in our learning session series. So we really appreciate your time.
Well, I think learning and sharing information is part of destiny of anybody who works in this business. Really needs to pass the image on and to pass the information on about creating music. It's something we all share despite any language barriers that we might have. And I think it's, you can be red, you can be blue, you can be anything, but music is an international and emotional language that we all speak, and we need to share it and change the world a little bit through it.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Robert, and have a great rest of your day. If you're interested in attending future learning sessions, I'm sure you all know at this point, you can find that out on our calendar at pro.harman.com. Thanks everyone for attending. We appreciate you. Have a great day.